Alright, today is going to be a different one. We're going to be talking about Ascension Perks and which one are actually worth your while, at least within my opinion. Please remember that this is my opinion and not a really irrelevant thing statistically. Your game may be different and, you maybe like to play it differently. Let's kick it off, shall we, with the Ascension Perk, well, listing in terms of tiering. Nihilistic acquisition, the notion of self-determination, blah de blah, unlocks the raiding bombardment stance. I would not particularly pick this one. It's very boring at the moment, really. At least in 2.1.2, there's not a lot of stuff you can really do with it. Sure, you can steal pops if you're a slave or empire or something along those lines, but there's not really much you can do with that. So I'm gonna give this a do not pick. Interstellar Dominion, which reduces Starbase influence cost and claim influence cost. Quite good in combination with the expansion tradition tree. They synergize quite nicely, and you can go really wide really quickly with this one. So if you want to play it really wide, Interstellar Dominion is the way to go, especially at the start of the game. Technological Ascendancy. Increases research speed plus 10%. It's a bit of a mixed bag, really. By the time you get to the late game, the amount of research and tech that you're going to get is so huge. So if you feel that you are not materialistic, or at least you're not a materialistic society, Technological Ascendancy may actually be quite good. If you are materialistic and you want to get ahead of the pack, then a 10% bonus towards research speed is actually kind of good. I'm going to give this a situational one. One Vision. It's terrible. Don't pick it. Monthly Unity plus 10%, sure, whatever. That's great. That only starts really picking off in the late game. And if you're playing really wide, then sure, it may be useful. But when you're playing really tall, you just go through the tree quicker, and you'll be there a lot quicker, sure. But by the time if you can get for the tree really quickly, and you're playing really tall, you're not going to have enough resources to build any of the Megastructures that you may want to pick with that. So, yeah, kind of annoying. Consecrated Worlds, only available to the religious or spiritualists, let's put it that way. Actually quite good, especially if you are a very tall playing empire, which basically unlocks a planetary edict called Consecrated World. It lasts for 100 years. It increases population happiness, spiritualist attraction, pop growth, and unity generation. Overall, very good deal. Generally quite expensive in terms of unity, but totally worth your while. And consecrating all your core worlds is definitely something that you want to do in the late game, where you are literally drowning in influence. So yeah, for spiritualist, a must pick in my opinion. Mastery of Nature. Initially, when Ascension Perks first came out in Utopia 1.6, Mastery of Nature was pretty much the instant pick because it made all the removing of tile blockers instant, well, not instant, but completely free, and you would get all the removal technology for them as well, which made it a absolute must get. It's now been changed. It's now reduced to a minus 33% clear blocker cost, which is kind of nice, but land clearance on the other hand makes this a very interesting one, because let's say that you were in an empire playing with a low amount of planets, or at least a very sparse planetary galaxy, and you find that all the planets near you are relatively small, let's say all size 9s or something along those lines. Mastery of Nature is definitely the way to go. Getting the planetary edict land clearance is exceptionally good for getting more tiles, more resources, etc. If you got a lot of planets and they're all large, or just a large amount of large planets, then Mastery of Nature becomes a complete and total waste of your Ascension slot. Imperial Prerogative, it's bad, don't pick it. It's plus 5 core sector systems. Now, considering you can just directly control any sector in the game that is part of your empire, there's no reason to pick it. Executive Vigor. This one is, by quite a long shot, in my opinion, the number one pick in any scenario. The Edict Duration plus 50% timer is such a huge boon that it's not even funny. If you want to play tall, if you want to play wide, Executive Vigor is the way to go, because increasing the Edict Duration of any sort of edict can increase up to 10 years, which means there is 10 years of getting more influence. Stuff like capacity overload, for instance, or production targets becomes incredibly easy to just reactivate because you'll just have more influence than you need in order to activate any of those edicts. And especially, it gets even better in the very late game if you have Unity traditions, especially if that's the kind. What am I thinking of here? Yeah, if you have the Distant Stars update, they are incredibly powerful, and Executive Vigor will double their time, or at least add a half their time extra on top of it. But it makes them incredibly good. Executive Vigor, way to go! First pick, numero uno for me at least. Transcendent Learning adds a leader level, increases the leader level cap and leader capacity by +2. Very situational. If you find yourself with a ethic where you do not have that many leaders or any sort of civic that gives bonuses to that, to leader cap or empire leader capacity, then you may want to go with those instead. This is very situational, like I mentioned. If you need more leader cap, you can always get this, but overall, I'm not a really big fan of it. This one, Enigmatic Engineering. So, Enigmatic Engineering is a bit of a mixed bag. It does increase sensor range, and it also increases the detection range of ship hyperlanes, which can be really good. Basically, it's a full-on replacement then for listening posts, which is kind of nice. And also it makes sure that the enemy can no longer reverse engineer your technology. If you are playing Materialist and you want to get ahead of the pack, Enigmatic Engineering is the way to go, especially if you're going to go for some of the rarer techs in the game, like Enigmatic Fortress or anything like that, or Dragon Scales, that sort of thing. Or maybe even Scrapper Bot if you get the nanite plating and that sort of thing. So if you don't want the enemy to get any of that and you want to keep the upper hand, I think Enigmatic Engineering is the way to go. Maybe also an option for multiplayer, but sadly I very rarely play that, so maybe a good option there. Colossus Project, incredibly situational. It does give you the ability to get a Total War Causes belly, but also means that everybody else gets a Total War Causes belly on you. It's very much a two-sided knife or two-edged blade or something along those lines. I don't really know what the idiom is, but still, yeah. Let's say you're low on minerals and you want to start cracking open planets. That's, I guess, a way to go. But considering how expensive it is and what the upkeep cost is for it, is pretty much. Yeah, I wouldn't go for it. It is very cool. Don't get me wrong, but let's say you're spiritualists. I guess it's useful because you can turn entire planets into believers instantly. If you are a assimilator, it's very useful. You can instantly assimilate an entire planet with it, which is kind of useful as well, and very quickly move through enemy territory with it. But yeah, expensive, difficult to construct, and yeah, it takes up an Ascension slot. Very situational. Wouldn't necessarily pick it unless I have the right empire in front of me, which would be a spiritualist or a assimilator. Engineered Evolution. It's one of the Ascension perks, or at least one of the Ascension paths. Yeah. Again, if you want to play with biological pops, then this one and Evolutionary Mastery definitely kind of useful if you want to specialize your individual planets and individual pops. I don't know how this is going to work in 2.2 with the planetary changes, but yeah, quite good. Not my favorite, but still fun. The Flesh is weak. My main pick, I would say, when it comes to getting stuff. Of course, contingency is more likely to spawn if you go this way. It gives you pops that are super strong, super good, and can do quite a lot of things. And of course, then there is synthetic evolution where you put your brain into a jar, or at least maybe even mind upload, and your pops basically get crazy amount of bonuses, like the synthetic bonuses and all that stuff. Mind over matter, really fun, I would say. You get a lot of really cool troops and really cool technologies. Some of the best technologies in the game, actually. Side jump drive can be gotten through this. Has some of the best jump ranges in the game. You can get psionic shielding, some of the best shielding in the game, and I guess a precognitive interface, which is one of the best computer evasion techs in the game as well, which is rather good. And of course, you get access to all the shroud stuff, which is really fun. If you want to have a nice spiritualist game where you're using mind bullets against the enemy, this one is definitely the way to go. World Shaper. All right, so World Shaper, reduces terraforming cost and allows you to terraform worlds into Gaia planets. Again, very situational. If you don't have a species that is particularly adaptable to certain ecosystems, then getting this may be useful, especially if there's a lot of large planets nearby that you need in order to expand. And also Gaia planets, getting them is kind of cool, so that's really nice. Galactic Force Projection. It used to be awesome, it's now terrible, don't get it. Defender of the Galaxy endgame, damage to endgame crisis factions plus 50%. If you feel that your fleet can take the endgame crisis and that you can throw an endless amount of firepower at them, then just skip this one. If not, if you find yourself with your back against the wall, then Defender of the Galaxy may be a really good situation or a really good time to pick it because, well, you need to defend yourself and it becomes a little bit dangerous out there, to put it that way. And if you are struggling and you unlock it and all of a sudden you find that you are basically cutting through them like a hot knife through butter, then it's a very satisfying little experience. But it does take up an Ascension slot, so it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Grasp of the Void, Starbase capacity plus 5. If you're playing really tall, yes, sure, you can get it. I guess I wouldn't go for it. It's kind of nice, but I feel that Starbase capacity should be more than 5, really. It's not that great. If you're playing really wide, that is, because you can colonize another planet or get some more space and get even more capacity. So, Eternal Vigilance. If you're on the defensive side and you're surrounded by enemies or etc., getting the Starbase damage modifier, the defense platform modifier, and the defense platforms plus 5 up and running, and this is quite good. This one is basically one of the best ways to get some of the most powerful stations in the game. I think they can go up towards 95 in this particular case. Of course, you can stack technologies and stuff like that at the end game, which is nice. Yeah, if you're playing tall and you want a lot of defenses around your station, this is the way to go. Or at least around your space, this is the way to go. Very useful, especially if you build your stuff inside of a pulsar system and your defensive platforms are all plasma weapons and the enemy just melts. So that's kind of good. Voidborn, you want to unlock habitats? This is the way to go. I never pick it, ever. I don't think habitats are that great. They used to be overpowered, incredibly overpowered when it first came out back in 1.6, but they have been nerfed into the ground, and sadly they are not nearly as good as they used to be, so, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, if you want to spam habitats everywhere, go right ahead. Voidborn. The buildings, they don't need to be upgraded. They're pretty expensive, but they could be a good way of evening out your economy if you need more energy and that sort of thing. Master Builders. Okay, Megastructure build speed plus 50%. Habitats owned by our empire will have an additional 3 tiles of space, so these two basically play in tandem. If you want to have Voidborn, you should also be going with Master Builders. And if you have Master Builders, you may as well pick up Galactic Wonders, but we'll get to that in a bit. Yeah, Megastructure build speed plus 50%. Very useful. Building Megastructures takes forever, and having the additional build speed is kind of nice. And of course, if you're playing with a lot of habitats, then getting the additional 3 tiles is kind of good. Of course, you also need 0-point power or Voidborn or Galactic Wonders to pick this one up. Galactic Wonders, for me, it's kind of good. I like it. It's especially if you have Utopia. Getting access to building the Sentry Array, the Science Nexus, Dyson Sphere, Ringworld. Ringworld used to be its own Ascension perk called Ring of Life, but they now have been merged together. Yeah, kind of good, actually. Sentry Array and Science Nexus are probably some of the best buildings in the game, especially Science Nexus, because it will just blow your tech through the roof. Sentry Array allows you to see everything. If you got a terrible CPU, it's probably, well, no, it doesn't really matter because the game is tracking them anyway. Dyson Sphere, if you need power, it generates a ridiculous amount of power with the right traits and the right setups and the right modifiers. You can easily get 1500 energy out of that bad boy. So, and Ringworld, if you wanted to build Rings of Love everywhere. There's one on this list that is being omitted as of right now, which is Machine Worlds, and Machine Worlds are only available to robots. And basically, it's the Machine World version of the Gaia planet. If you're robots and you want to play with some Machine Worlds and just have some fun and be, have some more efficiency, then that's the way to go. If you're assimilators, don't go for it, because you can just always assimilate more worlds. Only for standard robots it makes any sense, and of course determined exterminators. That one also makes sense for them, but for the other ones it doesn't really make any sense to get machine worlds, because you got bio trophies and all that stuff that kind of need to live there somewhere as well. And machine worlds aren't the greatest place for them, but you can also use machine worlds to deny the enemy territory, which is always good. So that's something to think about, because obviously organics cannot colonize machine worlds. So that's the way to go. So yeah, my tier list: Executive Vigor, absolutely and totally number 1. Immediately followed by, I will have to say, Enigmatic Engineering, a little bit of if you're spiritualist, Consecrated World is the way to go. Technological Ascendancy is kind of good. Stellar Dominion, very good for large expansions. Some of the other stuff that I just wouldn't want to pick, Galactic Force Projection is no longer any good. It used to be really good for the One Planet Challenge, but it's been nerfed into the ground. Eternal Vigilance, I would never pick it. Grasp the Void, very situational, and all the other stuff is pretty much situational. But now you get a general idea of what sort of scenario you can have with Ascension Perks, and when you should be picking some of this stuff up, and what sort of scenarios it is in. I hope that this was a little bit clear for you, and if you got any questions, or your opinion on which Ascension Perks, or if I ever got any, let's put them down in the comments, and we can have a discussion about it. But in the meantime, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, take good care of yourselves, and as always, each other.